DJ Nation fam, what is up? What is happening? Oh my goodness, we got a special show planned for you tonight. It is week 9 of NFL DFS season, and you know who it is. It's your host, Ryan Williams, at Ryan Alexander _W is where you can find me on Twitter. I'm joined by my usual co-host, Kevin Steele. You can find him on Twitter at FantasyRad13. And we are joined by none other than Maddie Dickinson. You can find him on Twitter at MaddieDTQE. And Maddie is a longtime friend of the podcast, former co-host of the podcast, and he's on doing his thing. Maddie, what is going on with you?
Not much, man. It's good to be back. I think week 1 was the last time I was on here with you guys. So good to be back now that we're at the midpoint of the season here and in week 9. It's crazy. It feels like we're on like week 4. It seems like seems like we go 2 weeks at a time here. But no, it's good to be back. We always have a fun show in store when us three get together. So this won't be the last time that I'm on this season, I'm sure as well. So. But ready to dive in with you guys.
Yeah, I mean, we might have to, we might have to talk to the powers that be and see if your contract will allow you to do the Thanksgiving slate with us. We were just talking about it last week and how excited Kev is for the Thanksgiving slate and just always talking about fading Dak and all of these other erroneous plays that he's talking about playing. So we might have to get you back for that. But yeah, it's a pleasure having you back, Maddie, for sure. Week 1, it was definitely fun. That was a time when we were thinking, or not even thinking, we were knowing that the Chiefs were the Mecca offense to kind of target and attack, and they were contrarian that week. And now we have, pretty much a up in the air situation going on here with that KC Minnesota game, which I think I don't know if a line's been set for that game. Is that correct?
I can check real quick. Let me pull it up.
I think, yeah, last I checked, I think there wasn't a line set. Just wait. I assume they're waiting on Pat Mahomes news to come out, Adam Thielen news to come out before that's even set. So this is, we're recording this on Wednesday of the week. So it'll be coming to you guys earlier, which I know you appreciate, but also a lot, earlier in the week than we're used to. And it's weird that we don't even have, as early as this is, a slate that is defined, because Pat Mahomes and Adam Thielen being in that game kind of change that dynamic, which we can get into later. But like I said, guys, it's week 9 of the DFS slate. We appreciate all you guys who've been joining us all season long. DFS DJ Nation pod. DJ Nation pod is where you can find us on Twitter. We know a lot of you guys have been in the Slack chat over the course of this season. So thank you guys so much for joining us. And if you want to get in that Slack chat, you can DM the DJ Nation pod or DM myself or Kevin at FantasyRad13 to get in there. Slack's been fun. A lot of guys have been over there hitting on the early slate. We've got a lot of guys who are just really good at crushing these smaller slates with the showdown, talking strategy, talking process. Maddie, I know you guys over at TQE are killing it week in and week out with what's going on with the processes there. I mean, Elliot's been grinding out a ton of content. Elliot Chris, that is, for the TQE. And your articles, the deep dive that you do into the running backs is really just fantastic, especially for a position that I feel like people are usually, going one way at it. So for cash and GPPs, I think that's a definite must read. So go over to the Quant Edge and see what they have going on and make sure that you're following along with their content, because they've been doing good stuff all year. Maddie, talk to them a little bit just about what you guys have going on and what might have been new since the last time you joined us.
Yeah, so really we've got an article that comes out that each week that covers, like, we have an article for each aspect of what you'd be looking for. Like I do, like you mentioned, a running back article as well as contrarian stacks. We've got 10 plays under 10% ownership by Elliott. We've got Elliott's core plays. Derek Brown, who's an absolute grinder, respect the hell out of him.
Yes.
He does wide receiver cornerback matchups as well as 10 stats you need to know to crush your leagues. And he's always got some really interesting nuggets in there in those 10 stat articles. So there's really like the slate gets attacked from so many different ways, and it's not just, oh, hey, here's the quarterbacks you need, here's the running backs you need. It's like everybody's looking at things from a different angle, and so some people present things in a way you just didn't think of, and not everybody's got the time to dive in to all the specific angles that there are out there. But yeah, I was telling Kev before the show. One of the running backs that got highlighted in my running back process was Tevin Coleman. And sure enough, I somehow ended up with 0 Tevin Coleman on my 3 teams. I have no clue how that happened, but I highlighted it. I was like, he's in a really sneaky, really good spot here. Make sure you get tournament exposure. And sure enough, I didn't play any Tevin Coleman, and he just blew the slate up. So yeah, I'm confident in the RB running back process, and so that's definitely one of my strong suits, I feel. So appreciate the shout out there.
Yeah, absolutely. Appreciate all that you guys are doing in this industry, which is definitely, I mean, there's so many avenues, so many ways that people can consume content that, you know, we definitely want to tout those that are out there doing good things. And also, you know, just tout ourselves. I mean, over at thefantasyauthority.com, I know Ryan Murphy, who's been a guest on the TFA pod, he's putting out an article each week that goes along with target analysis. I know we got Nate Henry going on and doing some stuff, I believe, with Snap Shares as well, too. So a lot of content going on at thefantasyauthority.com. Make sure you guys are checking that out. So we're here with the Week 9 DFS slate. And like we were talking about, guys, before in the pre-show, we got pricing here on Draftkings. And again, for those of you who might be new to the show, we do most of our pricing and conversation comes from those plays that are on DraftKings here. So we have an interesting state with DraftKings now where we don't have, you know, the high priced wide receivers that we're dealing with. We've got a lot of injury questions that we have to, you know, dive into. It's only a 10-game main slate. So I really want to just start in and dive in and kick it off with the quarterback position. That's one that we usually talk on. And Maddie, I'm glad that you're here to discuss the slate with us, because as you alluded to, when you were talking earlier, you make 3 teams that you usually live and die by on the main slate. So your core is going to be a lot tighter than that of mine or Kevin's when we're trying to, you know, really play in GPP fields, whether it be single entry or 20 maxes or even the 150 max, and kind of get exposure to guys that we really, you know, we're making our own core plays, but we're getting exposures all across the board. And when you only have 3 teams, you got to be set. So this is a slate here in Week 9 where I feel like in every slate, I kind of talk about this. Quarterback, you kind of have to get it right. In GPPs, in cash, I think you have a little bit of leniency and ways to go. I'm looking at guys like, you know, Aaron Rodgers going against the Chargers. Their defense has just been giving up a ton of points to the quarterback position. It's Aaron Rodgers. We saw what he was able to do when he was facing off in a matchup against Oakland at home, only throwing the ball for 31 times, but putting up 5 touchdowns, getting to the 400 yards, which of course got him that 300-yard bonus there, put him up for 46.76 DK points. And if you pretty much didn't have him in GPPs, you weren't in that top upper echelon of plays that week. But we've talked about it multiple times with you on, Maddie, that quarterback is a position where you can get a little leverage by taking a lower salary, or in cash, you can feel comfortable with playing a guy like Ryan Tannehill last week when he's only 4,900. And if he gets you 16 to 20 points, you're not going to be dead in the water, so to speak, unless a ton of guys get over that kind of 40-point threshold there at the quarterback position. So I'm interested to just kind of kick it off and see where you guys at a quarterback position here, where it doesn't seem like there's a lot of avenues to go, but maybe you guys will kind of talk to the people and let them know of some good ways to get ownership. So Maddie, why don't we start off with you being the guest?
Yeah, I think, like you said, the quarterback is really interesting this week. There's definitely, definitely some guys that have been good, like Rodgers, who are in interesting spots. what I've been trying to target myself is the pass quarterbacks against the pass funnel defenses, because you've got like a guy like Rodgers going against the Chargers. The Chargers have actually been much worse against the run than they have the pass, even though they're still bad against the pass as well. So you get in a matchup here where they could just lean on Aaron Jones and Jamal Williams on the ground, and then Rodgers doesn't have to throw as much. But you get Rodgers in a pass funnel game against Oakland, and all of a sudden he's throwing for 440 yards and 5 scores. So targeting those pass funnel defenses is really important. And we have, I think there's 4 of them on this slate that are in where we have a good quarterback on the other side. So you've got Russell Wilson at home against Tampa. Tampa has they've shut down the run. They're number 1 against all running backs this year. I mean, they faced McCaffrey twice. They faced Saquon Barkley, allowed him like 8 carries, 10 yards in the first half before he got hurt. It's the Tampa Bay run defense is absolutely legit, but their pass defense is near the bottom of the league, and it's absolutely terrible. It's just a pass funnel. So you've got a guy in Russell Wilson who people aren't going to play him because of his concerns for volume usually. But I think this is a spot where Seattle is going to realize that they can't run the ball, and they're going to have to rely on Russell Wilson. And usually we see Russ hit his ceiling, like he's got that 40-point ceiling in him. And usually we see that when he's pushed on the other side. He hasn't really been pushed the last couple weeks. They just blew out Atlanta. Baltimore, they just couldn't get anything going against Baltimore for some reason. But you look a couple games ago against Cleveland, 32-28 score, he scored 29 points. Rams, 30-29, he scored 30 points. Arizona, they won by 17 and he only scored 14. New Orleans, they were down, they lost by 5. He scored 45 DraftKings points. So it's those tight, high-scoring games that you want Russell Wilson, because that's where he hits his ceiling. And you've got Jameis Winston on the other side, going to come in and face a zone-heavy Seattle team that doesn't get pressure on the quarterback. And all the Bucs do is throw the ball. They do not run the football. Winston is going to sit back and pass against the zone all day long. I mean, we just saw Matt Schaub throw for 460 and 1 against the Seattle defense last week. Like, the Seattle defense just isn't very good. They've given up 28 points or more in 5 of their 8 games so far this year. So I absolutely love that game stack there, both Russ and Winston at 2 different price points. So I think that playing both of those guys makes a ton of sense. And then another pass funnel situation. I mentioned Rodgers against Oakland 2 weeks ago, and now we have Stafford against Oakland, and Detroit doesn't have any running backs. We saw Trey Carson come out and lead the Lions in running and rush attempts last week. Like, come on, Trey Carson, really? It's another explosion spot for Stafford to come out and throw for 300 to 400 yards and 3 or 4 scores. And he's finally hitting Galladay again after Galladay sitting out a week of like a 2-point dud, and Marvin Jones just scoring all the touchdowns that week. But yeah, like those 3 guys are in absolute pass funnel spots. And then other than that, I mean, if you want to, I mean, I know, Ryan, I probably can't talk you into this, but another absolute pass funnel is Mitch Trubisky against the Eagles this week.
Yeah,
he's probably the cheap guy I would take a shot on, just because the Bears aren't going to be able to run the football. And yes, Mitch has been bad, like really bad. But at some point, I mean, they're making changes. Nagy's saying he's going to start trying to call plays. I know they want to run the football more, but against Philly, you can't do that. They're one of the best fronts in the league. Meanwhile, their cornerbacks are absolutely terrible, and they've gotten shredded all year by terrible quarterbacks. So I think he is very, very interesting for tournaments. And we saw I wrote up Mitch last week, and I'm not afraid in tournaments to go back to him here. We've seen his explosion capabilities last year. He had, I think it was 4 weeks where he scored over 30 DraftKings points, and 3 of those 4 came at home. So I know he's on the road here, but I mean, again, it's a pass funnel. I think he ranks fourth out of those four that I just mentioned for me, but it's one of those. He's way down in the price range, and so if I was playing tournaments and taking a cheap flyer, it would be Mitch.
Yeah, that's a crazy call there. It doesn't make you feel comfortable. I actually built a cash lineup that had Anthony Miller in it as cheap he is. So I think the best thing about playing Trubisky in GPPs is like you don't have to really get cute about where the ball is going. And the same thing can be same for Jameis. I mean, if you're playing Jameis, you're stacking him with Godwin, you're stacking him with Evans, and you know that 30 of his 50 attempts are going to be going to those guys. So you're feeling pretty good about that. And with Trubisky, you're not liking the play, but we've been targeting quarterbacks against Philly all season long. And so you're looking at games that he had against the Saints, games against Washington. He put up 20 DK points. It's like not going to necessarily win you a GPP, but it's respectable enough if you hit on your other spots. And so if you can get a guy like Anthony Miller into a lineup with him, like Allen Robinson's being priced down, and wide receiver ones have been smashing against Philly. Taylor Gabriel, who went off in that Washington game and kind of has been quiet. Like he's not really targeting Trey Burton a whole lot. Adam Shaheen's not there. And, like you said, they're not going to be able to run. It seems like Montgomery is going to be there at least 1 to 2 down back. So maybe, you can get cute with a Tariq Cohen stack. With that and hope that he gets there. So when you're talking about in GPPs, somebody who's going to be, I would imagine 1, 2, 3% owned tops in big field, large field GPPs, there's definitely some value there. I just, I'm looking at Phillip Rivers right above for $100 more. And this Green Bay defense, it has, kind of been respectable, but we know that Phillip Rivers is just going to go out there and sling the ball around. And we saw that even last week against Chicago when he's, sitting back there, he's throwing for 29 attempts. So, you definitely want to get into that Tennessee, Pittsburgh, Denver range when he's, hitting 40 stride. But Keenan Allen was banged up. They couldn't really get anything going. They were off the field. But if he's able to play in a kind of a pace up type of matchup here, if Green Bay's getting out big, if they're able to get Aaron Jones running the ball, Jamal Williams running the ball, and they have to, throw from behind, I don't mind Phillip Rivers here in some spots as well. We haven't really seen him hit that 30-point threshold on DK, but, looking back to week 1 against Indy, who had a pretty, respectable defense there, ended up winning that game. He hit the 300-yard bonus, got 3 TDs. And they, Melvin Gordon just doesn't look like himself. Austin Eckler is not out there to run. He's out there really to catch. So if you can get some pieces right with Phillip Rivers and the pieces are all priced down, I think Keenan Allen's are just above 6K. Mike Williams is under 5K. Hunter Henry, he's priced up, but he's still getting huge snap share and target share for that matter. So, I definitely like the Phillip Rivers play in GPPs as well because he's so cheap. Kevin, where are you at with the quarterback position this week, and where are you finding yourself going to early on?
It's got to be some kind of record for one. I mean, 18 minutes into the this and I've yet to say a word. I mean, that's blasphemy.
Oh, you're here, Kev? My bad.
Yeah. I mean, I'm saying, but I understand, you want to, leave the best for last. It's fine. That's cool. I understand. But so no.
Talk to us, Kev. Talk to us.
So for one, as you guys kind of talked about in the beginning, this week with how pricing stands, like if you're wanting to get in Christian McCaffrey or Dalvin Cook, you're going to have to make some sacrifices somewhere. And it's hard because this week that there's a lot of really bad quarterbacks on this slate. Like you kind of have the top guys. And then from there, I mean, there's a lot of these guys that are just in terrible spots. And then the cheap quarterbacks, I feel like it's basically Derek Carr at 5,500. If you wanted to play him, like I think that he makes for the best, sub 6K quarterback on the slate going against Detroit. Detroit's pass defense has not been great. They definitely can be thrown on. I don't know if Darius Slay is going to be back. Sounds like he's, still disgruntled, but we'll see what happens with him. But I mean, we've seen Derek Carr play really well. We saw it last week against Houston. If this game has, I think the last I saw, I think Oakland has like 24 implied points expected for this game. It's I think it's the highest total on the slate as a total between the two teams. And I think this is just a terrific spot to target. And, we've seen him throw multiple touchdowns in 4 of his last 5 weeks. So, I think there's a lot to like here on that opposite side. I think a lot of ownership is going to go to Stafford this week, especially paying down a little bit, getting a little bit of savings at 6,800 for Stafford. I mean, paying down, I think, in just a great spot as well would be Derek Carr. And if you want to pair him with, whether it's Tyrell Williams, who continues to catch touchdowns, and or Darren Waller, or both, I think that's a direction you definitely can go and get a little contrarian at 5,500 to fit in some of these higher priced running backs that we want to play. I think that is where I would start in terms of the cheap quarterbacks. I definitely agree, though. Playing Stafford is a good way to go. Jameis Winston at 6,100 against Seattle. You guys already mentioned. I think you can go there. There is some concern with this man throwing he has 10 turnovers the last 2 weeks. I mean, but in fantasy, we don't really care, because honestly, you can almost look at it somewhat like a positive in terms for fantasy, because if he turns it over and they get behind, he's going to have to throw that rock 40 times a game and completely abandon the run. And I feel like that's just fine for me. So playing him, I think you can do that. Do you guys haven't really mentioned it, but like Sam Darnold hasn't been fantastic. Yeah. But I mean, at 5,900 against Miami, like this is the stretch run to target Jets. Now we've gotten past the Patriots and somewhat with Jacksonville. Jacksonville can be thrown upon, but from here, like the next 6 weeks, like the Jets just make for fantastic plays. Their schedule is about as easy as it gets, and really starting with Miami this week. Do you guys have any interest in Sam Darnold at 5,900?
Yeah, I think he's definitely in play for GPPs. The people that you're looking to target him around. I mean, we're still waiting to see if Chris Herndon is going to suit up this week at tight end. But you're talking about guys like Ryan Griffin going out there who are in the 3K range. Demaryius Thomas, who's still under 4K, I believe, or just above, that you're able to pair him with. He's getting a huge target share. Robbie Anderson and Jamison Crowder, these are guys who, are getting targets and are not expensive. So, like, they help you build around some of these other high-priced plays that you could feel comfortable going with. And we've targeted guys against Miami all year. So especially if people want to stray away from them, and you guys were talking about this on the TFA podcast, like this was the stretch that we were kind of looking for Sam Darnold to kind of be in play, even for redraft players, for redraft purposes, because the schedule just gets so soft for the Jets. So it's like he has had to go against New England. He has had to go against Dallas. He has had to go on the road against Jacksonville, even with them missing their linebackers. Like, these are not games that you're getting excited about playing him with. But now we get him in a favorable matchup here against Miami, who just doesn't really even seem all that willing to go out there and play for anything at this point right now. Like, the team is just unraveling at the hedges. It seemed like they were gonna, they were getting hyped for what could be their first win against Pittsburgh. They come out, Fitzmagic is throwing the rock all over the place, hitting Albert Wilson, hitting Preston Williams, and then they come back to earth. So I just don't think they have any faith right now in the system. And so this is definitely a get right spot for the Jets, in my opinion.
Yeah, I don't. One, with Sam Darnold, the Jaguars did that man dirty last week, and their stadium sitting there playing the Ghostbusters theme song. That is about dirty as it gets, in my opinion. That man has a family, and I think the mascot, was like, my goodness, like they played a blooper reel with the Ghostbusters theme. I mean, with the funniest part to me though, watching that video was that the stadium was empty. Like they had like 8 fans there. So I'm like, I thought that was
Jacksonville game.
Yeah, typical. But anyways, yeah, I like Sam Darnold. I think there's people that are going to be shying away from playing him, especially at 5,900. It'd be one thing if he was 5K, but at 59, that's kind of up there a little bit in price. But I think it makes sense, and I think pairing him with like a Robbie Anderson or even a Demaryius Thomas, who's been pretty heavily targeted as well. So I think he can do that. But yeah, I just thought that he is kind of an interesting play. What are you guys doing with Kirk Cousins? My take on it with Cousins is I feel like that this is a game like we've seen that the Kansas City can definitely be run upon. They haven't been able to stop it. They're down Chris Jones. It sounds Alex Okafor could be out because Aaron Rodgers about killed him with the juke move last week and destroyed his knee. And it's embarrassing. But they're missing so many key pieces along. Frank Clark could be out again. And, if Patrick Mahomes doesn't play, like I don't think they really need to throw the ball that much. But, I mean, it looks like a pretty enticing spot, 6,700. He's played pretty well. I mean, outside of last week where he didn't have to do anything, I mean, you saw 23, 31, 32. However, I just don't think they're going to throw the ball that much. I mean, he's only thrown the ball over 30 times, I think, once all year or twice. No, 3 times. Okay, 3 times all year. Looking through the game log, but only once over the last 5 weeks has he thrown the ball that much. And if they don't have to, like, I feel like that this feels like a game where Dalvin Cook is going to get 30. He could get 25, 30 attempts between him and Alexander Madison. And so, really targeting him at this upper price range, I think, is pretty risky. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm playing Dalvin Cook. I'm not playing Kirk Cousins. Like you said, it's a rushing. The rushing matchup is so good that's what I've been trying to avoid when playing quarterbacks is, these teams they want to run the football if they can run the football, and in the good rushing matchups, they're not just going to sit back. Now, if it's Mahomes or somebody like that, or Deshaun Watson, team that doesn't really have a running back and they have an elite quarterback, that's different. But when your game is built around the run, like the Vikings is, they want to give Dalvin Cook the football as much as they can, and there's not going to be any pushback from Kansas City, so that's just going to limit Cousins' upside. So I'd rather just play the guys that are not going to have success being able to run the football, and they're going to have to throw the ball. And for me, that's Stafford, Stafford, Wilson, Winston, and then if you want to get weird, Mitch Trubisky.
If Pat Mahomes plays, 1, how does that change your outlook on Kirk Cousins? 2, what do you feel about Pat Mahomes?
If he plays, I mean, it's Pat Mahomes, and the guy can throw for 350 yards and 4 touchdowns any given day against any given defense. And it's also a situation where the Chiefs are not going to risk their franchise quarterback if he's not really healthy. Like, they don't have the need to.
Do we know that, though? I mean, this is a team that ran a quarterback sneak when he's dealing with an ankle injury. Like, do we trust Andy Reid to, like, not just say, go out there, Patty, and go win some games for us?
I mean, in the nature of it, the nature of the injury, it's not going to – I don't think it's going to – I'm no doctor by any means, but from what I've read, it's not going to hinder him. Now, there is the risk of him re-injuring it. But it's not. It shouldn't hinder his performance. It was a dislocation. So once you pop it back in, it's a matter of, okay, does it hurt? And if it hurts, can you play through it? But there is, once you dislocate something, it's a matter of it's easier to re-dislocate it once again. So that's always a risk. But I mean, anytime Mahomes plays, you do want exposure to the opposing quarterback because that game can get into a shootout. But if he's out, then it's Dalvin Cook, and I'm not even going to think twice about Cousins.
I hope that if he plays, the way I hope it would play out would be that he's a game time decision, and we get the news like right up to lock that he plays, because his ownership will be very, very. and well, really all Chiefs ownership, in my opinion, will be, Tyreek Hill, Travis Kelce's ownership will not be nearly as much as what it would be if we find out tomorrow that Patrick Mahomes is playing. I think there's a real chance that he plays because, it sounds like that, like from stuff that's been said around here, is that Andy Reid actually wanted him to play last week, but the doctors said no. And that's why he didn't play. So it really has nothing to do with the front office or the team, which is crazy because I totally agree. Like, I feel like the AFC West is a dumpster fire. There's no reason to rush him back. Let him sit out another week. By the time if he sits out this week, he will have not played an NFL game in 3.5 weeks, almost so nearly a month. He will not have played, but only missed 2 games because of the Thursday night. And it makes more sense from a long-term perspective to not rush him back. Because when they don't need him to, it's not like that the Raiders or the Chargers are like, nipping at their heels or tied with them, and they could lose out on a playoff spot right now. Because they said if it like last week, if it was like playoffs, something on the line, or if it was the playoffs, he was going to play, or he would have played. But so if the doctors clear him and say he's ready to go, he's going to play this week. And so I don't know. We'll have to wait and see how it plays out. But I think this could be one of those. Could be kind of the implications. I think are pretty big on if he plays or not this week, just because of all the other position players and how all this is going to shake out. Because I think that you could make an argument that on any week that he's the top play of the week, and then what he does with this, what he's able to do, and I think he elevates somebody like a Tyreek Hill to a point that. Tyreek Hill becomes a fantastic play because there's nobody on Minnesota that could even touch Tyreek Hill or slow him down. And Xavier Rhodes has been trash. But anyways, that's just really was my point with it. And I think that's one of the biggest things to monitor this week is what happens with Patrick Mahomes. So
I think there's just a huge edge for the pass catchers there because how low price they are with expecting Matt Moore to be in there. You're getting Tyreek Hill at an extreme discount. McCole Hardman, who's actually, been fantastic this season, all season long, whether it's Mahomes or Matt Moore. He's like at $5K, I believe. And all these guys will be in a fantastic spot. So I think your leverage play there would be, okay, Mahomes is in. Let me up my exposure to the guys that he's throwing to, the deep play threats. Even Sammy Watkins there. Who's definitely priced down, would definitely be in play. Real quick before we move on to running backs, guys, Maddie, I'll ask this to you because I know you play both. If you had to play a quarterback in cash, quarterback in GPPs, who are you? Where are you playing your flag there for both of those?
Man. To be honest, I haven't really played much cash this year, so my cash mindset is completely out the window. I've been strictly three entry max tournaments, live and die by the tournament. But
yeah, I hear you. Are you paying up for GPPs, paying down for cash, or vice versa?
So in cash, it makes sense to pay down whenever you can, and to get a guy with rushing upside whenever you can. Just because you want the floor ceiling combo. I know in previously, like in prior years, we've always harped on a high floor in cash, but it's actually gotten to the point now with the field getting sharper because of all the content that's out there nowadays. You actually kind of have to have a ceiling in cash as well. So you can't just play the $4,500 quarterback that's going to throw for 200 yards and 2 scores. Because the nature of the game now has shifted to quarterbacks are throwing for more yards and more touchdowns, and guys are hitting ceilings more often. And the field is sharper in predicting those outcomes. So I tend to go for like a floor ceiling combo, and that's like a guy like Jameis Winston stands out for cash to me because Tampa Bay doesn't run the ball; they love to throw the ball. Winston's attempts 43, 54, 27, 41, 37, 25, and 36 this year. That's really high volume. And it's on the road in Seattle, but Seattle doesn't get any pressure on the quarterback, and Jameis is 6,100. And in cash too, if you're playing Jameis, you know exactly, like you mentioned, Ryan, you know exactly where the ball is going. So I think my cash quarterback would probably be Winston this week, just based on price and volume. And the matchup is pretty good as well.
Fair enough. Kev, who are your three favorite quarterbacks, or where are you finding yourself at this early in the game to have your exposure lean to?
Right now, it's probably Stafford, Darnold, and Derek Carr would probably be the three that I would look to the most. I love Russell Wilson as well, but with where I want to do at running back, I feel like that I'm not going to be able to pay up at quarterback as much. So I would rather sacrifice that and pay down at quarterback this week, and not because Russell Wilson's in a fantastic spot. If this game turns out to be, high scoring and back and forth, then Russell Wilson is can explode here and, smash that price tag, but ain't really get on top of that. But for me, I would prefer to pay down like a Derek Carr, and even like, I don't mind the Mitchell Trubisky call. Like, I definitely think that is something that could happen. I wish that he was actually running the ball. Like this year, he just hasn't been doing that. And I think that's what made him so dynamic last year, was seeing him actually use his legs. He's just not doing that this year. I don't know if it's because of the injury. I don't know if it's something that they're trying to stop him from doing. But like, I felt like that was another aspect to his game last year that I think set him apart. And when those really huge weeks that he had, like that's a lot of the reason it happened. But we just haven't seen it this year. And I wonder, is it because of the injury or is it more than that? But I wish they would get him going. But at that price tag and that matchup, like, it's hard not to have at least some interest there.
Yeah, I agree, Kev, on the running. It's been unfortunate to not see him kind of utilize his legs. For me, a guy we didn't talk about, but real quickly, just Josh Allen. I would be playing him in cash. He's just been so consistent with what he's been giving you. And I just feel confident in taking a quarterback like that who's got the rushing upside to play in my cash lineup. So I'm getting a lot of Josh Allen now. But in GPPs, I talked about Phillip Rivers. I like a lot. And then I'm trying to get to Russell Wilson just because he is the highest priced quarterback. I do like targeting the high priced quarterbacks in GPPs because I don't feel like they get owned enough. So let's move on to the running back position. And this is where we're going to be able to have some fun here. We got Christian McCaffrey at the top, who's finally, for the first time, I believe, all season, he's priced up to $10K. So, of course, he goes for 100 yards on the road against San Fran, catches a couple passes out of the backfield, and DK's like, oh, man, this guy's legit. We got to price him up. So you see him at $10K there for the first time this season. Dalvin Cook not far behind at $9,500. And then you got a drop off all the way down to Le'Veon Bell at $77. Connor, who's got the questionable tag, we're not sure if he's going to suit up, $76. Nick Chubb, Chris Carson, Aaron Jones. That rounds out your $7K or higher running backs. For me, for cash, for staples, it's find a way to get Dalvin Cook, find a way to get Aaron Jones, and build up the rest. I know Aaron Jones has a Q tag. I believe he's been limited. Yeah, limited today. I don't think there's anything to indicate thus far that he won't play. The usage he's been getting out of the backfield as far as catching the ball and the target share has been great. So you're liking that. I mean, he's had targets in the red zone where he hasn't come down with the ball, but Aaron Rodgers is definitely looking for him. I think it's a lot to do with Devontae Adams being out with the turf toe injury and just having his wide receivers not being able to catch passes from him, including Jimmy Graham too, who's had a couple drops in the season. So he doesn't get a lot of usage on the ground there. 13, 12, 11, 19, like not really 20 attempts, only one time against Minnesota. But the fact that he's getting the targets at the backfield just makes him such a strong play, I feel like, in cash games. And I'm fine with rolling him out there at the $7K price tag. I'm curious to see where you guys are. We definitely got a lot of interesting plays here. I mean, Jordan Howard's in a revenge game. He's 5,100. If Miles Sanders isn't able to go, I could see him getting just a ton of carries here in this matchup. Had 23 carries against Buffalo. Not even a favorable matchup for him, but still almost got you the 100-yard bonus there. 18 points. He had been fairly consistent there. Kind of in the middling weeks where we saw 11 carries, 15, 13 against the likes of Detroit, Green Bay, and the Jets. And the one thing about the Bears right now is like missing Akeem Hicks, missing key players in their front seven in the interior has really allowed for teams to kind of, bully them up. And I thought that, Melvin Gordon was in a good spot to do that last week. They just got into a position where they weren't being able to make plays and had to throw. But I think this is a team you can definitely run on up the gut. So I have interest in Jordan Howard there at his price tag. And another guy I've interest in is Nick Chubb going against Denver. This is a team that I've tried to attack as well on the ground because their interior is just kind of shaken up. Back-to-back games with 20 attempts and over 100 yards on the ground. That was against New England and against Seattle. So it's fair to say that he's pretty much matchup proof, and he's just not being priced accordingly because the Browns are so bad. But this is a game where I feel like on the road against Denver, like this is going to be a sloppy game, probably low scoring. So I think he should get his fair share of work. And I don't mind him at that 7,300 tag to get some leverage on the field. So Kev, let's start with you. What are you looking at early on this week in running backs, and what's sticking out to you?
Well, like I mentioned with the quarterbacks, I think the biggest decision comes with these running backs, and it really comes down to Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook and finding ways to get them into your lineups, because both of them, I think, one, Christian McCaffrey, as we know, is just matchup proof. And I know a lot of people are going to probably be scared away once you get to the 10K price tag. I think that just I know I think we talked about it last year with certain players when it happened. When this happens, like it's just sort of like a mental thing when you see it. You're like, okay, too high. He could be 9,900 and people wouldn't bat an eye at it. Then he gets to 10K and people
right
out about it. It's just something mentally. And I'll be interested to see as we get closer to Sunday to see what his ownership is going to come in at, because if it's going to be significantly lower than Dalvin Cook, I want all the Christian McCaffrey, because he can easily smash that price of his 10K. Last week there was a lot of people that were really down on Christian McCaffrey. His ownership was only like 10 to 13% in most tournaments, and that is insanely low for him. And I mean, he definitely paid off that price tag that he had last week, and it was a bad matchup. And it goes to show that he is matchup proof. I mean, they got their heads beat in, and he still went out and put up a really big game. And so I have no problem with paying 10K for him. Yes, Dalvin Cook is in a fantastic spot as well. So, if you could really figure out a way to get both of them in your lineup, that would be ideal. But I mean, I think that's going to be really tough to do. But just having one of them in your lineup, I think is a must. And like I said, I would probably look at it in a way of, I think if Christian McCaffrey I do think that he is going to be less owned than Dalvin Cook. And I think it could be higher than 5 or 10%. And I think that's too much. Base it off a $500 price difference. So, anyways, somebody like Le'Veon Bell going against Miami, I think a lot of people are going to want to play him too at 7,700. My issue with him is he just isn't seeing the volume. Just if you look at his attempts, 8, 15, 14, 15, 18, 21, 17. He only has one game this year over 21 rushing attempts. And yes, some of it's maybe because of game script. But even like the week against Dallas when they held, I think it was like a 21-3 lead at halftime, and he still only ended up with 14 carries in that game. He's not seeing crazy. He's getting targeted, but most of his targets are very short, dump off type throws. He's not being utilized really as a receiver that much. And so for me, paying 7,700 for him, and yes, it's a great matchup, but I don't know. It's very risky for me to think about paying that price tag for him. James Conner, it sounds like James Conner may not play this week. He did not practice today. It sounds like he's going to be a real game time decision. And to be honest with you, like, I think there's a real chance that he even would be, if he does play, I don't think he's going to be the lead back. Like, I don't think he's going to go out there and get 60, 70% of the workload. I think it could be more of a, maybe he only gets 40% of the work. So Jalen Samuels at 4K might just end up being the free square of the week. And if James Conner's ruled out, he's 100%. You just lock him into every one of your lineups and not think twice about it, because at 4K, Jalen Samuels, and they don't have anybody else. Benny Snell sounds like he's going to be out. So then it's what? Trey Edmonds, I think, is the only other running back they have on the roster. So, you know, this is a perfect time for Jalen Samuels to come back. He's been out with, I think he had a knee scope, but he practiced in full last week. They held him out this past week. And I don't know what Pittsburgh was doing, even thinking about having him out there at the end of that game. It was clearly over. It was, you know, burning the clock time, kneel down time, and then they decided to put Jalen Samuels, or they put James Conner out there again, and that's how he got hurt. So, like I said, if Jalen, I mean, I think Jalen Samuels, I think you can play him even if James Conner plays at 4K. I think he has a pretty decent role, whether he plays or not. So, for me, it's definitely, like I said, Christian McCaffrey, Dalvin Cook. I do like the Nick Chubb. I think Aaron Jones is definitely a play. I think he plays. I'm not worried about that with him. And then I think that's kind of where I want to be at. Melvin Gordon, I would love to play Melvin Gordon, especially at 5K. I mean, you can definitely run against Green Bay. That's been one of their kind of their weaknesses this year, is really stopping the run. That's where a lot of teams have tried to attack them. But it's just tough because Melvin Gordon has looked like a dumpster fire this year. And he's kind of with him back, it's killed. It's not killed, but it's really hurt Austin Eckler as well. And Austin Eckler's 6K to Melvin Gordon's 5K. But man, I mean, that's a pretty cheap price to not want to at least have a little bit of exposure to Melvin Gordon, who can easily get on top of that.
Maddie, talk to us. What are you seeing?
Yeah, I think the Chargers run game is definitely interesting. Ryan, I know you mentioned you love Phillip Rivers, but they just fired their OC, and if Lynn is going to come in and call plays, when he was the OC in Buffalo, Buffalo ranked first in rush attempts and dead last in pass attempts. So I think if the Chargers do choose to just fully lean on the run here, you're getting a discount in Chargers backfield. Melvin Gordon's cheap. He's been horrible, but I mean, the matchup's good enough to where does that even matter? Green Bay has just essentially said, we're going to stop the pass and we don't care what you do on the ground. So I know that Eckler and Melvin are going to continue to split work, but I mean, these guys are normally priced up over 7K. And now you're getting Melvin Gordon at 5K and Eckler at 6K. I think they're really interesting for large field tournaments. Though I don't know, I have enough confidence in them to go like the single entry 3 max route with those guys. But I think if you're doing a 20 max or playing 150 teams, I definitely would want exposure to those two guys. And then another big, you guys mentioned a lot of the guys that I'm on, so I won't double dip there. But the other big injury news this week is Philip Lindsay. He's dealing with a wrist injury that he had. I think it's the same wrist that he had surgery on in the offseason. So that's just something to keep an eye on, because him and Royce have been splitting work. And at home against Cleveland is about as good as it gets on paper. So Royce Freeman would become near lock with Jalen Samuels. So all of a sudden you have the slate would be flipped upside down. You'd have everybody wanting to jam in McCaffrey and Cook up top. And now all of a sudden everybody's playing Samuels and Royce Freeman. So that's definitely something to pay attention to as we approach Sunday, because the injury news could change the slate drastically.
Yeah, that's a good thing to monitor there. Maddie, I didn't even see that with Philip Lindsay, so that's huge. Josh Jacobs, real quick, he's 6,500. He's going against Detroit. Kind of struggled last game against Houston, but this guy was really doing damage against the likes of the NFC North there, against Chicago and Green Bay. Really running the ground. He's just tough to play on DK because he sees little to no passing work at all, but he's just one of those guys I feel like if he's, getting 22, 25 touches, he's going to pay off even at this price tag. if he ends up suiting up. So are you guys interested in him at all? I know, Kev, I know you talked about Derek Carr a little bit, but Josh Jacobs, another guy that you've mentioned from time on the pod.
I like Jacobs for sure. I played Barkley in the same spot last week. I know it's Saquon Barkley, but I played Barkley over McCaffrey last week because of the matchup against Detroit. It's up there for the best on paper. Detroit's been giving up a ton of rushing production, and Josh Jacobs, that's all he does is run the football. Like you said, he doesn't catch passes. So I mean, 100 yards and 2 scores is definitely a viable outcome.
Yeah, I definitely agree. He's in a fantastic spot, 6,500. I think that he's not going to carry the ownership that he should. So I do like that call as well. I definitely am on board playing Josh Jacobs. I wanted to ask you guys, because I don't think anybody really talked about it, but Chris Carson has received an insane workload this entire season, really. And is he somebody that you guys want to play? My concern with him, and maybe it's the same for you guys, is that Tampa Bay's run defense has been absolutely elite. I kind of waited for it to like drop off. It just hasn't. And they've been fantastic against the run all season. Now, the thing with I think the flip side to that, though, is Seattle is so hard-headed, they will continue to run the ball no matter what. And especially if they can build a lead, they're going to pound this rock. But at 7,200, is that somewhere that you guys would want to go with Chris Carson, mainly because of his volume?
I can't. McCaffrey, 22 carries, 31 yards, 4 catches on 5 targets for 26 yards, and then he did score 2 touchdowns against them. But then week 2 when he played him, 16 carries, 37 yards, 2 catches, 6 targets, 16 yards, no scores in that game. And then I know I mentioned Saquon earlier. He had 8 carries for 10 yards, I think, off the top of my head. But that week he got hurt in the first half. At halftime, that was his rushing total. So yeah, no, this Tampa Bay run defense is legit. They've just completely sold out to stop the run, and they're just giving up everything through the air, which is why I love Russ so much. And I can't play running backs against Tampa Bay.
Yeah, it is tough. I will say real quickly that, you know, Maddie's making 3 teams. So the optimal way to build is to not even consider this guy at all. And I don't blame him. But if you're 20 maxing, especially if you're 150 maxing, you know, get yourself 10 to 15% exposure to Carson. And I would say, you know, definitely try and find ways where you can pay for Russell and pay for Carson, because nobody's going to do that in this matchup. And it is a matchup where we've seen Kyle Allen, you know, in that London game, put up decent numbers. It was not on a main slate. It was on a single game, but he put up decent numbers with throwing the ball to just Curtis Samuel, Greg Olsen, and DJ Moore. And then McCaffrey was the one getting the touchdowns. So like Kevin's saying, they are hard-headed, Seattle is, and they could end up getting in the red zone. You know, if they're on the 5-yard line, 2-yard line, 1-yard line, like Carson could end up vulturing some of those touches or touchdowns, I should say, but Wilson could still get yards, get the 300-yard bonus, and, you know, maybe pair him with a Metcalf, or if you pair him with Lockett, and just hope that the scoring comes from that one of those 2 guys. I think you could find a significant edge there in large field tournaments by having exposure to both Carson and Russ, because nobody's going to do that. They're going to play one or the other. And like you're saying, Maddie, it's not optimal to play him solo, I don't think. But if you pair him with Russ, if he's able to get you some pass catching work and maybe get some touchdowns, I think it's definitely viable in some builds here. So it's been hard, but the dude's on the field, so at least you're banking on that to kind of pay that off for you.
I think the other main issue for me is the guys that are around him in price range. Like, I'd rather pay 500 for Bell, 400 for Connor, 100 for Chubb. I'd rather save 200 for Aaron Jones, and I'd rather save 700 for Jacobs. And then even Derrick Henry at 5,700. Like, there's just so much around Carson's price that I like better. like even if I was playing 20 teams, like I would have exposure to those other guys before I had exposure to Carson.
I definitely agree. It is a do I want to take first in this tournament play or not? Because he's a landmine.
If he was 6K, it'd be a different conversation. But I think 7,200 is a really tough sell for me.
Fair enough. Let's move on to wide receiver. And this has been fun as well to target. So as I said at the beginning of the pod, Saints are on bye. We don't have to worry about Michael Thomas. Atlanta's on bye. We don't have to worry about Julio Jones. Rams are on bye. We don't have to worry about Cooper Kupp. So really, we're not getting any priced up wide receivers that we're used to seeing. We're used to seeing an 8K wide receiver on the slate, and we got Adam Thielen at the top, who's questionable at 7,800. Kenny Golladay, he's just been great. Especially in the home matchups, coming off of a 6-catch, 123-yard game, 2 touchdowns, like could have been more, honestly. He's 7,700, finds himself in a good matchup. Stephon Diggs going against KC, which a KC pass defense was one that we were targeting at the beginning of the season, and they've kind of, righted the ship, I feel like. But if it's just Stephon Diggs going out there with no Adam Thielen, I think he's definitely viable. Tyler Lockett there at 7,500 going against Tampa Bay. We talked about them being the pass funnel. Tyreek Hill, he's 7,400. I think that's too cheap if Patrick Mahomes is out there, not Matt Moore. But he hit a big touchdown with Matt Moore before, and it seems like Matt Moore is going to throw deep to him. Godwin and Evans, of course, are priced similarly to each other. It's kind of been a back and forth weeks for them. One week it's Godwin, next week it's Evans, the other week it's Godwin, next week it's Evans. So Mike Evans just went bananas. Maybe it's a Chris Godwin week. They're 7,300, 7,200 respectively. Devontae Adams, he's still dealing with the turf toe. We might see him this week, limited at practice. He's 7,100. You could probably talk me into playing him in some GPPs with Aaron Rodgers there. When we get into the 6K range and the 5K range is where it really gets interesting to me, at least from my standpoint. I mean, DK Metcalf, he's kind of just been flirting around this 5K range. Was 5K for the first time, I guess, against Atlanta. Didn't really, it paid off, but only because of the touchdown scores. But he's just been up there in air yards. He's a big play waiting to happen. If we can get him in the 6 to 7 target range, I feel comfortable with playing him with Russell on the teams, hoping that he gets a big score there to pay off. Corey Davis really let us down there. He's 4,600. I'm looking at guys maybe like Mike Williams I talked about earlier, who's around him. I think, he could find himself in a good matchup here. His targets have kind of, they've teetered off, but he's still getting 6 out of floor. And at 4,600, I'm comfortable with rolling him out at this price tag. He's another guy that's kind of just a big play waiting to happen. It seems like Phillip Rivers is always relying on him to kind of convert a third down or looking to him as Keenan Allen's been banged up all year. I was looking at, Cortland Sutton, this Cleveland secondary has been banged up. He's the guy now with Emmanuel Sanders being gone. Only saw 6 targets there in that first game with Indy, and really had this 3 for 72. It felt like for a majority of the game, he came out huge at the beginning and stride really hitting, and then they kind of filtered off. So now he's going with a backup quarterback because Flacco will not be starting this week. It'll be Brandon Allen, who we didn't even touch on, and so. Maybe he's not a high ADOT guy as well, so maybe he's leaned on a little bit more, or that could be the tight end that we'll talk about in a little bit. John Brown going against Washington at 6,100. He burned a lot of people last week at 59, I felt like. I saw him in a lot of people's cash builds, and so he gets the bounce back spot against this Washington team that we've targeted with wide receivers all year. At least I have. Target share has still been there. Receptions are still pretty consistent. He's just waiting to get to 100 yards, and I feel like this is definitely a good bounce back start for him. I do love Josh Allen as well. Juju Smith-Schuster going against Indy at only 6,300. That's just way too cheap for Juju. So I'm loving these plays, in this middling range here. I talked about Anthony Miller. He's 3,700, pairing him with Mitchell, and even the Miami guys. You can make some merit to Devontae Parker and Preston Williams in the 4K range. Maddie, what are you looking at wide receiver early on this week, and where are you finding yourself getting the most exposure to?
I don't know if I mentioned this week 1 when I was on, but what I've been trying to do is I feel like I have a good handle on running back in terms of predictability. I feel like that's the easiest position for me to project and predict. So I've been narrowing down my running back pool, and then my wide receiver pool has normally been stacks with my quarterbacks and then run backs on the other side. Now, obviously, it's going to depend on if I have a running back that runs back my stack, then I don't need a wide receiver. But so it's going to be, you're going to see on my teams this week, you're going to see Godwin. I do think it's a Godwin week because Godwin's much better against zone, whereas Evans is a man beater. So I do like Godwin a ton. I also love Allen Robinson at 6,800 against Philly. I mentioned that pass funnel defense there. Galladay, love Galladay up at the top. I don't know how many people are going to pay for him at 7,700. Tyreek at 74. I know you mentioned him as well. If Mahomes plays, the Minnesota defense really struggles with the smaller, quicker wide receivers. And it's partially because of Rhodes' size. He's much, much better against those physical big wide receivers. And he really struggles with the small speed guys. So I think Tyreek Hill is in a really good spot but I'm only on him if Mahomes plays. And then I really like, I know you're on the Chargers passing game, and I mentioned to kind of be weary of maybe their volume if Lynn is calling plays, but I think Mike Williams' blow-up game is coming. He ranks 9th in the NFL in air yards, and he's 7th in the NFL in end zone targets. So the dude has half the receiving yards that he does air yards, and he has 0 touchdowns this year. For a guy that ranks 7th in the NFL in end zone targets, has 0 touchdowns, that's going to change at some point. And it's going to come sooner rather than later. And I'm just going to keep clicking the cheap plus sign next to his name until it happens. So 4,600 is way too cheap for him, and he's probably my favorite value wide receiver on the slate.
Love it. Kev, what say you? Where you at?
One, I will say this, like just looking at the top wide receivers is a little weird, not saying any of the normal studs that you see up here. To see Adam Thielen, Kenny Galladay, Stephon Diggs, Tyler Lockett as all the top price guys is a little jarring. But with that said, yeah, I mean, Kenny Galladay is in a fantastic spot. I think Tyler Lockett has a tremendous matchup this week against Tampa Bay. So 7,500 Tyler Lockett is certainly a direction you can go. I agree with the Chris Godwin call. Allen Robinson, I'm definitely on that. A couple of I mean, I think Robbie Anderson at 5,500 is a fantastic play. I have some interest in Danny Amendola. We know that Matt Stafford loves targeting as a slot wide receiver, and he gets a fantastic just matchup this week overall. Should be facing up against LaMarcus Joyner, who's been terrible this year. And if he continues to see the same kind of target share that he saw last week, it's not a thing we see consistently from him, but I think at 4,700 to pay, if you're looking to pay down, I think that is a spot you could go. The thing that worries me with him though, is I don't think he has a huge ceiling. So I think maybe, it would just depend, because I don't think he's a guy that you can count on. He's going to get you a couple touchdowns or anything like that. But I do think with that sort of target share at 4,700, I think at least it's a solid floor play at the very least. I do really like Preston Williams in this matchup at 4,200. The Jets are certainly beatable through the air. He is certainly, Ryan Fitzpatrick, favorite target. And, last week he was even against the Steelers on Sunday Night Football. He played pretty well. They stopped going to him. And then, in the second half, the Dolphins kind of imploded a little bit. But at 4,200, Preston Williams, I think he is certainly somebody that I think that can, give you 20, 25 DK points, if things go well. I don't think, he only has one touchdown on the year. I think that changes a little bit, especially with the amount of targets he's seeing. I mean, just since week 3, he saw 12, 7, 6, 8, and 7 targets and has not scored in any of those games. He's not scored since week 1. So I do think that with Ryan Fitzpatrick still at quarterback, they said they are going to stay with him, which is somewhat surprising because it feels like, the full tank would be just, going back to Rosen. But at least with Ryan Fitzpatrick, I think that you can at least have some intrigue with this passing attack. And I think that that's Preston Williams for me. If I want to target any Miami Dolphin, it would be Preston Williams. And against the Jets, it's not a terrible matchup. So I think that's somewhere that, you can definitely go. Other than that, I do have some, I wonder now, with Joe Flacco now out of the offense and them going to Brandon Allen, typically, especially a quarterback that's, I think this would be his first career start if I'm correct. They typically tend to gravitate towards, their tight ends or their slot receivers to get those high value targets. And I wonder if Deshaun Hamilton at 3,700 is somebody who gets an uptick in targets because he has not been targeted at all this entire year. Typically plays mostly in the slot. We saw last year, whenever he finally came on with Manuel Sanders, once Manuel Sanders got hurt last year, he really came on and became a pretty solid target. And I wonder, this week with Brandon Allen now at quarterback, is this a spot where he finally gets going at 3,700? I do think that's someone interesting in tournaments someone that you can look at.
Yeah, and he's not on the slate. I was just typing in his name, but I believe that Tim Patrick could be eligible to come back this week for Denver. He's somebody that caught flame last week too. I could have sworn that he was, and maybe he might be a week or 2 away. But that was the name I was kind of monitoring from redraft purposes, even as a deep sleeper, and would be interested in him if he rolls out there. But I like targeting the tight end in Denver, and we can talk about that in a second. Is there anything else at wide receiver that we could be missing here, or any type of news that we'd be waiting on that would kind of dictate the slate? I mean, if Adam Thielen's in, are you guys paying up all the way for the highest price wide receiver? We got T.Y. Hilton, OBJ, Keenan Allen all banged up. Looks like Valdez-Scantling's banged up. Can we go back to Geronimo Allison? Is there anything that we're missing here that could be standing out and dictate the slate?
In terms of dictating the slate, it's not. I don't think it's as drastic as the running back position is.
Okay.
Yeah, Deshaun Jackson's another big one for that Philly pass game, but I mean, that's not going to really do much for me in terms of if he does or doesn't play. Yeah, I think running back is the big news piece that we have this week.
Okay, interesting. I'm just looking. Oh, I'm typing in Browns. Go ahead, Kev.
Well, I was just going to say, so it seems like, or at least it feels like that at least the best plays at wide receiver are also kind of up top. Once you go down past a certain point, it gets pretty dicey pretty quick. And especially with as many bad quarterbacks we have this week, that really hurts the pool of wide receivers that you can play. So I guess what I'm going to ask is if we love the top running backs and we love the top wide receivers, and we love the top quarterbacks, there's no way we can fit all these players in. So I guess if you had to get contrarian at a spot, where is it at? Is it just paying taking the hit and paying down at quarterback and going with the Trubisky and or Derek Carr? I mean, what is it like? Because it feels like that, at least throughout this entire podcast, we've kind of talked about, like, it really looks like all the top plays and the ones that everyone feels most comfortable with are at the top. And then once you get down towards the bottom, like, I know running back, I think there's some low owned, like we talked about. Jalen Samuels could be a free square. I know we didn't really talk about like Mark Walton, who's 4,500. He's getting like 86%. He got like 86% of the snaps last week, which is like elite level type stuff. And
we're not talking about Mark Walton for a reason.
I'm just throwing him out. I mean, at 4,500, I mean, he doesn't take much for him.
Balaj is still there
against the Jets,
Yeah, it could be Balaj though.
I know. I'm just throwing him out. I'm just saying. I'm not saying like, hey, yeah, smash Mark Walton in. I'm just saying that you're gonna have to find a way to get different. And if you look down at the top wide receivers, I mean, all right, even at the wide receiver position, there's not like a lot that stands out to me. That's like, okay, yeah, I think you can definitely feel comfortable playing. It's maybe Mike Williams. It's maybe Deontay Johnson, who had a really big game last week at 4,500. But then, I mean, do you feel comfortable playing Devontae Parker or Curtis Samuel at 4,300? McCole Hardman's 4,200, but if it's Matt Moore, and McCole Hardman only played 9 snaps last week, so that's a tough one to play. Like, I mean, my point is how are we going to fit all these guys in when we don't have the salary?
Well, my point is the slate could get flipped on its head come Saturday afternoon at 4:00 if we get Lindsey's going to be inactive, and James Conner's going to not be the main running back or be inactive for Pittsburgh. Now all of a sudden you've got Royce Freeman at 4,900 and Jalen Samuels at 4K is free running back squares. And then all of a sudden you can play all these high-priced wide receiver guys. But with that being said, if we don't get that news, I always side with paying down at wide receiver or quarterback over running back because the volatility of the wide receiver position, like even the high-priced guys that are in good matchups, there's still volatility there to where those guys may not produce. And there's always cheap wide receivers who go off and catch a long touchdown just because of the nature of the position. It's easier for a cheap wide receiver to hit a ceiling than it is for a cheap running back that's only going to get 8 carries to hit his ceiling. So I definitely would try to take shots on some guys that are seeing some deep shots and some end zone targets. And a perfect example is Mike Williams. So I would, to answer Kev's question, it would be I would either pay down at quarterback or pay down at wide receiver to try to make that work.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's format related too, because if we get where Maddie's saying, you get Samuels, you get Freeman. I'm just playing them both with Dalvin Cook and starting my lineups there and seeing what exposures that I can get to in spots that I like. So, okay, like Jameis, can I get both of Chris Godwin and Mike Evans with these two guys and feel confident with my lineup? Can I get the, Russell Wilson and Chris Carson in a lineup with these guys? I guess you can't because of DK. You only get 3 running back positions, but can I find ways of games that I like to still build around that? So that's how I would do my cash lineups would be, okay, I'm locking in these 2 guys who are 4K at the running back position who are going to get targets, and give me Dalvin Cook, who's the lesser price and a better matchup than McCaffrey, and just build from there. And then in tournaments, it's going to be more so of let me try and get more balanced. And then even, I guess, I'm thinking NBA now because NBA season's like, but stars and Scrubsy, because with Freeman and Jalen Samuels becoming free squares, like Freeman's in a much better matchup than Jalen is. The target share will be there for him, and I get that, but like Christian McCaffrey and Dalvin Cook on lineups is going to be so much more of an astronomical bump than playing those guys, especially if the ownership is. So I'm going to be looking at ways of how can I get both McCaffrey and Cook, who are 2 of the highest projected players, probably on the slate even, into these lineups in GPPs and feel confident in these builds. And that's probably where my, exposure to Phillip Rivers with Mike Williams stack is going to come in. A Mitchell Trubisky to an Anthony Miller stack is going to come in, and just build around there, because with football, we love it when we get those plays because I do think it makes it easier for the double up builds. And I love that for cash to get these scratches. But it also makes it great for GPPs because the ownership there is just moved off of so many more of these other great plays that nobody's thinking about. Nobody's going to be thinking about playing, Tyler Lockett really when he's a high price, wide receiver and we're just jamming in these running back plays. Nobody's going to be thinking about Nick Chubb at running back when we get these free square plays. It's going to open up the field so much in GPPs that I'm just going to look at the spots that I like and just mix and match.
This also goes back to I think it was, I don't remember which of you two said it, but DK did a really good job pricing this week.
Mm-hmm.
It's tough. It's not easy. So I think that goes back to what Kev's saying is we want to play all the high price guys because DK did a good job pricing up the guys that are in the best spots. So you do kind of have to get a little weird. So
my thing too with like the Royce Freeman thing is that I know, is that this, while Cleveland hasn't been, they're not great against they're not great against stopping the run, but they're not terrible either. Having Brandon Allen as a starter is certainly a problem for any running back because I feel like that the Browns are just going to send a house at every single down and say, Brandon Allen, you're going to have to beat us for you to even have a shot at winning this game. And I feel like that they can take away Royce Freeman relatively quickly. And so, while the price tag of $4,900 is certainly appealing for Royce Freeman, this is an absolute terrible spot for Royce Freeman to be in. Now, maybe Brandon Allen comes out and turns out to be, a serviceable quarterback. Like Gardner Minshew turned out to be, and Kyle Allen's turned out to be. That's certainly in the range of outcomes. But right now, without knowing that, it certainly isn't a great spot for Royce Freeman. In terms of even if he does get the touches, because with you're trusting a quarterback that's never started an NFL game to even be competent, and if he's not, Royce Freeman could get game scripted out of this pretty quickly. Because I feel like if Philip Lindsay doesn't play, then I think you probably see Devontae Booker have a role that we haven't seen any at all this year from him. And I think that he becomes more involved and becomes a pass catching back. And to be honest, if you run to get really crazy, that would be a way to go because I think he would probably be absolutely free. I'm sure he's the bare minimum at $3K.
Yeah, no, that's a good point, Kev. I think you also look at how many times have we talked about this, Kev, is roster construction. And I think the best news that you could get is Freeman being the lead back on Saturday. So when most people are building their teams, Freeman's on the late slate. Okay, who else is on the late, or I should say the afternoon slate? The afternoon slate of running back position. So who else is there? Okay, people are going to be locking in Royce Freeman. Well, Melvin Gordon's also there, and he's 5K. Huge leverage spot. Most people aren't going to be thinking about Melvin Gordon. So let me find the extra money to just get up to Melvin Gordon and pay him. And the ownership's going to be lower because most people will have a running back left that's going late. They're probably taking Royce Freeman or, getting leverage with Chris Carson, who's on the late slate, getting leverage with Nick Chubb, who's on the late slate. So I think that you could really take advantage of people who are going to play Nick Chubb, and he's not going to be locked in from the noon games. He's going to be on that late slate. So if you're in a position to where you can leverage the field and just say, okay, I feel confident about Royce Freeman's production, but I have this build where I can move up to a guy like Nick Chubb and move down on wide receiver to Mike Williams instead over Royce Freeman. Or I can, build around where I have money to get to, up to Russell Wilson instead of, Derek Carr, I guess, or something like that, to get leverage on some of these plays as well, because Royce Freeman's ownership is going to be high and he's plays later. So you're going to get people who aren't going to be looking to swap, who aren't going to be looking to take advantage of ownership. And that can help you out extremely in tournaments, even cash. If you're, looking at it and you have a build and you kind of, are just missing the cups, then you want to get you want to get leverage on making sure that you hit in 50-50s. You can do it with the build there. So it'll definitely be a fun slate monitoring those two situations. Thank you, Maddie, for bringing up the Philip Lindsay news, because I didn't even see that. And then especially with Jalen Samuels, even though he plays at 12 o'clock, definitely things to monitor. Let's move on to tight end here. Get into this slate, and of course, as we're used to seeing with tight end, we got high prices and we got low prices. So we got Travis Kelce at the top, 6,900. Two 6,900 plays here this week with Aaron Rodgers and Travis Kelce. That's not by design at all, but that's nice. Darren Waller at 6,300. Hunter Henry at 6K. So those are your high priced tight ends this week. And then you got Zach Ertz at 4,700, who should be in a decent spot here. It's amazing the target share that Zach Ertz is getting. It's just not anything that we're used to. Been talked about a lot in redraft amongst redraft connoisseurs who might have drafted Zach Ertz fairly high and thinking that they were going to get, what they're used to seeing out of him. But Dallas Goedert is definitely making a name for himself. They're running a lot of 12 personnel there, getting 2 tight end sets in. He only has 1 touchdown on the year. But 4,700, I can't even remember the last time I saw Zach Ertz at this price tag. He could be interesting in some GPPs there. If we get a get right spot out of him. But then after that, you're looking down here. I mean, last week was the week to play Jonnu Smith. He was 2,800. Now he's priced up to 3,800, 1K difference in price. TJ Hawkinson, he's 3,700. Kind of really hasn't done much of anything as of late. Really cooled off from his opener game there where he went ballistic. But he, definitely could be in play in game stacks there for Detroit and Oakland. Greg Olsen, it seems like it's been a minute since he's been on a main slate. Had some decent games against Tampa Bay in favorable matchup. Tennessee, not terrible, not great to target, but also not terrible to target with the tight end. He might be able to see a role there if Samuel and DJ Moore get shut down. Ryan Griffin, I was talking about if Chris Herndon's not able to go, he's kind of seen an uptick in targets too. Saw 4 against Jacksonville, caught all 4, went for 24 DK points, which helped out with the 2 touchdowns. So he definitely seems like he has a role. And then Noah Fant here, he's 3K. So we got the backup quarterback. They usually lean on tight ends. Saw 8 targets last week against Indy. Noah Fant's just been out there. He's getting a huge snap share, but just hasn't been getting the target. So if we can get an uptick in targets for him, I think it makes sense to play him in GPPs there, going against the Cleveland team that we've targeted. We've targeted them with tight ends before. Dallas Goedert, like I said, he's 3,100 and clearly has a role here. 3 targets, 8 targets, 4 targets, 5 targets in his past 4 games, 2 touchdowns in his past 2. Definitely makes some sense to play Dallas Goedert there, just as much as he's been on the field. Gets really ugly after that. I'm not seeing too much of anything myself, but where are you guys at with tight end? I mean, for me, if I'm paying up, I do like Hunter Henry because I am playing Phillip Rivers a good amount right now, but Darren Waller's been legit, and you're getting pretty much a wide receiver 1 at 6,300. You feel pretty good about that. I couldn't play Kelce unless Mahomes was out there, and then I think that's a good leverage play. But where are you guys finding yourself at with the tight end position? Kev, let's start with you.
Yeah, I mean, again, here we are, and the guys that I really want to play are the most expensive.
Yeah.
As Darren Waller and Hunter Henry, 6,300, 6K a piece. Like I think both of them are in fantastic spots. Green Bay struggled against tight ends. Same for Oakland, same for Detroit. I think that you can play either one of them, but again, it's going to be tough getting up to them with everything that we want to do. So if paying down, definitely, it sounds like Delaney Walker is probably not going to play. He did not practice again today. Did not practice at all last week. But with Jonnu, now he's a little bit higher price, and this is a much tougher matchup than playing against Tampa Bay last week. So I don't mind playing Jonnu Smith. He's a super athletic tight end. So paying him at 3,800, I think is probably where I would start if I'm paying down at tight end. TJ Hawkinson, the Raiders, I think have given up the third most DK points to the position. The problem with him is, like you mentioned, he's just not getting as much opportunity that he was before. So I was just looking at him. I mean, basically, that week 1 blow up spot, but since then, his routes run has kind of gone down. It's went up a little bit prior to, because at week 3 and 4, he only ran 18, 11 routes, but since coming back from injury, he ran 24, 31, and 21. That's not terrible. It's kind of what you want to see from a tight end, but at the same time, he's just not getting as much opportunity as some of these other, mainly because of how well that, Kenny Golladay and then Danny Amendola and Marvin Jones have all played. Like, he's kind of the fourth guy here now. But again, I mean, the Raiders are terrible against the pass, or terrible against tight end. So $3,700 TJ Hawkinson isn't awful. And then I guess past that, like, I don't know, like Dallas Goedert's probably always in play at 3,100. The man just continues to get especially opportunities inside the red zone, and that's kind of what you're looking for tight end. Like, you don't, especially if you're paying 3,100. Noah Fant is one that I really do like. Like we kind of already talked about with Brandon Allen starting this week, they tend to lean on their tight end, and I think at 3K, I think this could be a good spot for him. And then past that, like, you'd have to be pretty desperate if you wanted to play like a Mike Gesicki, who's gotten opportunities and has kind of stepped up a little bit. The main man, Tyler Kroft, got four targets last week for $26. I can't go a podcast without mentioning him. And dude, can we talk about this? So close, Darren Arnold, the man, he had a touchdown. And I think it was called back. Like, oh my goodness, it was almost Darren Arnold week all over again.
I knew it was going to come up.
Hey, I can't help myself. Dan Arnold is a legend on this podcast, and always will always be talked about in a positive light.
He is. I agree.
Yeah, tight end's rough this week. No Dan Arnold's for you, Kev. Maddie, are you seeing anything differently here?
I'm looking into one of these situations real quick. Just trying to do one last check while you guys were talking.
So right after Maddie, you talk about tight ends. We're going to get into our DFS DGen Nation Millie Maker slate. They've been they've been fluctuating from $10 to $20, vice versa, back and forth. So this week it is back to 20. We're going to enter that in. Feeling real good with Maddie. Kevin and I have been on a very cold streak with our build. So Maddie being back will definitely help with that. Maddie, you found what you were looking for?
Yeah. So I don't know why airyards.com doesn't have this guy, but whatever. So week 7 was obviously the first week the Seahawks were without Will Dissly.
Mm-hmm.
The Seahawks played from behind that game. They lost to Baltimore 16-30. The snap share in that game, Hollister saw 51% of the snaps, and Wilson was at 47. And Hollister saw 6 targets.
Okay.
Whereas the game against Atlanta, Seattle played from in front the whole time. Hollister only saw 2 targets, and he only played 36% of the snaps, with Wilson playing 70. So it looks like Wilson, just based on a 2-week sample, it looks like Wilson is the running game guy from the play in front used for blocking, and it looks like Hollister may become the pass catching tight end. And he's kind of athletic too. I was just looking at his player profile. So I was trying to look up his like target share and all that, but for some reason he's not on airyards.com. But with that said, he's 2,900 against Tampa Bay, who has just gotten absolutely demolished by tight ends all year. And if you're playing Russ and want to be different and maybe hope that it's a shootout, then I absolutely could see Hollister maybe catching a touchdown.
Interesting. Like that call. That is why you're listening to the DJ Nation pod this week, boys and ladies. Jacob Hollister,
I just
man.
want to point out.
What do we think his final ownership is going to be? Go ahead, Kev. What do you have to say?
When I put out an obscure play, I get crushed. Who? We're not playing him. Get out of here. Get the fuck up, you idiot. We're not playing that guy. Maddie says it. It's like, what a brilliant call. I tell you what, he is something else. And this is why we have him on the podcast.
We just hope that you can stay awake through the podcast, Kev, and that you're gonna back it up with some data like Maddie just did. I mean, look at him putting in the work.
Make sure you're paying attention, Kev.
Researching live on the pod, it's fantastic. So, Maddie, applause to you. Thank you so much for doing your homework, and we'll have some Jacob Hollister here on the DJ Nation teams.
Complete side note: Nats are up 4-2 with bases loaded, top 9.
Here we go. That's what we're talking about. Game 7s, man.
Game 7, man. It's been wild.
Game 7s. That's wild. Let's hit the defense special teams so we can build this lineup. I almost forgot about defense special teams and my it's been interesting. No Patriots on the slate. Don't worry, guys. You don't have to pay up for defense this week. Wow, Patriots have just been amazing. So we're left with the Bills, Seahawks, and Jets being at the top. Jets is interesting to me. They're 3,500. I get that. Doesn't make you feel great about it, especially when you've been targeting them cheaply, I should say. But 3,500 against this Miami team, they just show. I mean, the Pittsburgh looked like they weren't going to do anything, and then lo and behold, Miami's left to, put it in Fitzpatrick's hands, and he's throwing interceptions, and offensive line is letting him get sacks. So there's definitely plays to be made there. And anytime there's a Greg Williams-led defense on a slate, I'm going to look at them. So 3,500 for Jets, I don't mind. It's not something that I'm going to try and jam in, but I'm definitely interested in them as the high price. Carolina's just been one that has been targeted week in and week out. I feel like every week I'm looking at, who's playing whom in cash defenses and who's in the Millie, who are people playing in Millie, who are people playing on FanDuel, Fantasy Draft. It's always the Panthers. Panthers are always being talked about, and it's probably because they've been so cheap. They were 3,500 on not even on a main slate, on a single game slate, and have really been around this 23, 24 to 2,800 range all season long. And last week was against San Fran on the road. They got blown out pretty much, and usually 51-13, we're going to see negative from the defense. Well, we didn't see that from Carolina. They were able to get a safety, able to get sacks, able to get an interception. They've just been making plays all season long. So against a Ryan Tannehill-led team, I'm okay with playing Carolina at 2,800, and they found their way into my cash build thus far. Just seems comfortable. That's pretty much it for me at this point in time. Seattle going against Tampa Bay, as Kev said, the turnovers there. I can't blame you paying 3,600. Jameis has turned the ball over, like Kev said, 10 times in the past 2 games, so they make a ton of sense. But ownership's definitely going to be skewed to some of these top teams and probably the Carolina Panthers. So where are you guys at with your defenses this week?
I like the Panthers, like you just mentioned. I think I was just trying to look that up as well, but I want to say they're top 3 in adjusted sack rate on defense, and Tennessee's bottom 3 in adjusted sack rate allowed on offense. So, and with Tannehill in the game, he can definitely turn the ball over. So I do like the Panthers if trying to pay up a little bit. I know they're like mid-range at 2,800. Otherwise, I've just been personally, dude, DK keeps giving us these defenses under 2K, and I love it because I can just jam in all the position players that I want. So I don't hate Washington at 1,800 at Buffalo.
Okay.
We've seen Josh Allen turn the ball over, and Buffalo could just relegate to a run game here, to where they're, not really putting up points, and I don't know. Defense is the defensive touchdowns are not really predictable. I try to target spots where defenses are going to get good pressure on the quarterback because that's usually where the mistakes come from, which is why I like the Panthers. But, I mean, you're giving me a defense at 1,800. It's a high variance position. And, I mean, it just takes one guy to fall down on a punt return. You got 6 points or something like that. So, yeah, I'm all for paying 1,800 for a defense if it allows you to fit in the lineup that you like.
Fair enough. Kev, are you paying 1,800 for the Redskins, or you found something else for us?
I don't mind that either. I mean, it's not a terrible matchup for him either. It's not like you're worried about the Bills necessarily going out there and just dropping 40 points on him either. So, yeah, I mean, I think you can do that. One I personally like, I do like the Chiefs at 2,200 at home. Kirk Cousins definitely can be mistake prone. They got rid of they now have basically Tyreek Hill and McCole Hardman returning kicks and punts for them. I think that's also a nice edge. I mean, McCole Hardman has come very close the last couple of weeks of taking a house calling one since he's really taken over as the punt returner there. So I think that's another plus for them. But at 2,200, I think that is certainly a direction. But then the Browns at 3,100 going against the Broncos, and Brandon Allen, give me all the Browns so that I can get my hands on at 3,100. So it feels like a get right spot for them. So yeah, I like that at 3,100. Other than that, the Packers, I think, is another way. 3,400. We know the Chargers offensive line has been just anemic, and they're ravaged with injuries. The Packers do a pretty good job with getting pressure on the quarterback. And so, yeah, I think that's pretty much where I'll be. Maybe I have a little bit of exposure to the top ones, but for the most part, I'll pretty much be sticking with the Browns. And then, if I want to pay down, the Redskins and the Chiefs are ways that I would go.
Okay, I like it. I like it, boys. That's it. That is your Week 9 DFS main slate in a nutshell, or in a 90-minute nutshell, I guess, if you want to call it. That was a fun ride, and like I alluded to before, we can't let you guys go without billing this Millie Maker team. So we got the $20 contest here loaded up right now for you guys. It's a Millie to first. There is over about 170,000 entrants in it, just over. So definitely gotta be on the right plays in order to hit this. But we always do it, and we're gonna do it once more here for the Week 9 main slate. DFS DJ Nation building their Millie team right now. And let's get into it here. Maddie, why don't you start it off and kind of dictate for us how this build is going to go?
All right, let's play. Since it's the Millie, let's play for ceiling. We're going to go with Russell Wilson at quarterback. He's got highest ceiling of all the quarterbacks on the slate.
All right, Kev, go ahead. Where are we going next?
Tyler Lockett, 7,500.
Like it.
All right, and then I'm going to game stack it from this perspective. Go with Chris Godwin on the other side, 73. So already right now we're paying up for a wide receiver in this Millie team, but we will keep tabs on the news on Saturday, guys, and let you know, because the way this build goes, there could be something that opens up that allows us to kind of switch it up. So just as a disclaimer, we'll tweet that out if we end up doing that.
Let's go Mike Williams, 4,600 for salary.
Kev, what you thinking?
Let's go Mark Walton.
Oh,
no, I'm not doing that. Let's go Josh Jacobs at 65 and see how that
I like that. I can get on board with that. Faux show. Faux shizzle.
All right, I'm going Noah Fan at tight end for now, just to give us some salary relief here. See what we can do.
All right, so we've got 4.6 left across 3 positions. All right, so let's try to make the Panthers defense work at 28.
Let's do it. Okay.
And you guys can fill running back and flex for 56 per.
Kev, what you thinking?
I was trying to see if there was a way we could fit in Dalvin Cook, but we're $200 short.
Then use the Redskins.
No, that was the
okay.
And I locked in the Redskins, went with Hollister to see how that would work, and we were $200 short. So I will go. You know what? I'm gonna go Melvin Gordon.
I really don't hate that in the Millie Maker at all. Really don't. He looks horrible, but
200 at the flex.
Or 7,200 if you want to switch to Redskins. So it's Redskins and Aaron Jones.
Yeah, I don't hate that at all.
Or keep the Panthers and go. There's not really anything unless John Brown. You can play John Brown.
Yeah, I'm not feeling great about it.
I kind of
maybe. Yeah, I was thinking Aaron Jones is great. I mean, Hunter Henry, it just seems like, why are you paying $6K for a tight end? I mean, really, like that's what it comes down to. Like, if you're not playing him with Rivers, I just don't see him getting there on his own, especially with Mike Williams already in our build. So I think the play, is to get Aaron Jones and just think that, Josh Jacobs and Aaron Jones go bananas. So you're not missing Cook and or McCaffrey in your line.
Yeah, and see, I'm glad that kind of happened because that's the scenario where I will pay $1,800 for a defense. Like, I feel like Aaron Jones is in a category of his own compared to those $6,200 guys. So I will gladly just eat the defensive variance there for $1K less, and it allows me to fit a next tier higher flex play.
Love this line. So we got Russell Wilson at quarterback, Josh Jacobs, Melvin Gordon, Tyler Lockett, Chris Godwin, Mike Williams, Noah Fan at tight end, Aaron Jones in the flex, Redskins D, 200 left remaining salary. And I think that's going to be the Millie Maker team that we submit. So I'm going to go ahead, update entry. And as I update that entry there, I think that's going to do it for the DFS DJ Nation Week 9 main slate. Maddie, it was great to have you here, man. Great to have you back. Of course, the show's always run long, so you being here isn't any different. So we appreciate the time that you are giving us. Guys, check out Maddie Dickinson at MaddieDTQE is where you can find him on Twitter. He's doing all good stuff there for the Quant Edge. Make sure you guys are checking them out, checking out what they have going on, the content there. It is behind a paywall, so not everything is free. Not everything in life comes for free, but I promise you the content is well worth the price tag. Go over to fantasyauthority.com. We got articles coming out both for DFS, redraft fantasy. What you got, as I mentioned, you got Nate Henry over there putting out his snap counts article, and then Ryan Murphy's got his target analysis that he does. Those guys have been killing it every week, been making guest appearances on the Fantasy Authority podcast. So that's been fun. DJ Nation, we got a ton of articles coming out this week for you as well. So stay tuned for those on Saturday as those come live. And then the podcast is going to be coming to you here shortly. So it's going to be saved there. YouTube, Periscope, you guys can get it on the iTunes, Stitcher, all of these different channels. The content is available for you. So in case you missed it, it'll come to you live. Guys, any last words before we close it out for week 9?
Nah, just appreciate you guys having me on once again. And this definitely won't be the last time this season. I'll try to make the Thanksgiving slate work because that's definitely a fun one. So appreciate it, and I'll be back on for sure.
Kev?
Yep. It's only a few weeks away. We're like probably 3 weeks, 4 weeks.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah, 4 weeks.
Don't say that because man, the holidays they stress me out. So much going on.
Holiday season. So that's why we got to grind out these next couple slates so that it's a little bit easier on all of us. But DJ Nation, thank you once again for joining us for week 9. Signing off for at Maddie D. TQE at Fantasy Rat 13. That's my co-host Kevin Steele and myself at Ryan Alexander _W is where you can find me on Twitter. That's week 9 in the books. DFS DJ Nation. We'll see you at the top of the leaderboards in tournaments in cash. And we out. Peace.